Now, Alphabet or Google just reported Q3 2023 earnings after hours, and it sent the stock down 5 to 6% in after hours trading. And then the next trading day today, the stock was down 9.6%. Mind you, year to date, the stock is still up over 41%. That's on AI enthusiasm and after the bear market of 2022. Hi everyone, JJ here with the Art of Value. Welcome. Well, let's dig into the Google numbers, the earnings, see what's going on here, see why it might have dropped, see what's going on with the stock and my thoughts on it. Now, as we can see here, the numbers weren't bad at all. They were very good. We have 11% revenue growth and 28% operating margin. This shows a management that's doing a good job. We see a big increase in earnings per share, and compared to a year ago where we had people worried about a recession, which still could happen, by the way, there are people still saying that, and people were worried about advertising. Advertising is one of the first things to go. Google does rely on advertising heavily, and so does Meta. These big tech companies do rely on advertising heavily. Even Amazon these days has got a growing advertising business, but these numbers were pretty good, very good. So this fact that the stock went down must be for some other reason. Apart from the overall market, the market was down today. The NASDAQ was down over 2.4% today, and the S&P 500 was down over 1.5%. So a pretty bad day for the market, but still 9.6% down, nearly 10% down for Google on pretty good numbers. We see growth really accelerating in the business, even though it's a huge business and great profit margins. So what is sending the stock down so much at the moment? And we saw 11% growth with $77 billion of revenue for this huge company. And this growth wasn't just in one area, it was pretty much across the board. We see Google search and other up about 11% year over year. We see YouTube ads growing about 12% year on year. One small decline was in Google Network, where they work with third-party independent sites. Most investors wouldn't be too concerned about that. It's just a small decline. It is a decline, but it's really not a big core part of the revenue, but still nobody likes to see a decline. Overall, Google advertising growing around 10%, which is pretty healthy. When there's a looming recession, concern of a recession, this is pretty healthy growth for Google. Google Other, which includes the YouTube subscription services, growing pretty healthily at 21%. They talked about this in the earnings call, what they're doing in that area, which they've got some new initiatives going on there. Now, Google Cloud growing about 20%. Now, this could be one area of concern, and I'll talk about that in a minute, because it wasn't as much as Microsoft, which could be concerning investors. Is that an area of concern? Did that send the stock price down? So overall, when we look at the earnings, it really is pretty good. We can't really see any weaknesses there, except maybe cloud not growing as much as investors would like. We'd like to see that maybe 30% or more, but really not a weakness. It's going very well for Alphabet across the board. Added to that, they've been doing buybacks, billions in buybacks. So you could argue if the stock price has been weak, they've been collecting up shares, hoovering up shares, which is an added bonus for investors if they keep doing that. Even if the stock price goes lower and they keep hoovering up shares, that's a bonus for shareholders as well. Buying back shares, decreasing the share count over time. So now let's talk about why the possible decline in the share price. Even though it's up pretty strongly for the year to date, over 41%, that's still pretty good, but it's less than it was a couple of days ago. So it's been going down. People didn't react. Investors didn't react well to these earnings, even though from what I can see, they're very good. What's the reason for that? Let's get into it. Now, if you're getting value out of this video so far, I'd appreciate it if you remember to hit that like button if you're watching on YouTube or on X too, to help the algorithm to spread it to more people. Now, if you want to go to the next level to support the Art of Value, you can go here to buy me a coffee. I'll put a link in the description as well. And I want to say a big thanks to Cheese Weasel. That's right, Cheese Weasel. Thanks very much for being the first Buy Me a Coffee supporter. I said I'd shout you out in the video, and here we are. Thanks very much. And if anybody else wants to support, I'd really appreciate that. Thanks. So first of all, the competition for cloud, Microsoft, their earnings just came out this week. It was pretty stellar, their earnings, and their cloud has grown closer to 30%, 29%, as opposed to Google's growth, which is quite a lot lower. So that would be a concern for investors here, that Google isn't growing as fast as Microsoft. And as we know, Microsoft is getting into AI. They've got a big investment in OpenAI, and this is the major concern and source of excitement in the market this year in a number of companies, including Nvidia, Microsoft, Google, and others. So Google is one of the leaders in AI. It's playing a little bit of catch up to OpenAI. It could be said, or that's the perception. I've been using Google Bard. It's a pretty good product. It does make mistakes, but Microsoft is well in there with OpenAI with a huge investment, $10 billion investment. And is it paying off already? And is cloud related to this? With cloud, they're definitely putting resources into AI, helping out with that. That's part of the big investment. And so really it's Google versus Microsoft, these big players. And is Google falling behind, or is that the perception from investors anyway? There's a lot of uncertainty there, and the market doesn't like uncertainty. Investors don't like uncertainty. This is one of the big problems that the stock didn't actually go up on these great earnings, because the cloud area is seen as part of AI, and that didn't go as well as Microsoft. And the thing is, it was growing faster for Google, it was growing more like 30%, and now it's gone down to a lot less than that. So that is a source of concern, a legitimate source of concern. They'll be wanting to increase cloud. So Microsoft really pulling ahead there, doing well. It's going to be interesting to see when Amazon earnings come out, how it goes with their cloud as well. And of course, directly related to Google with AI is the problem, or the perceived problem, with their search business. We can see from the numbers here that there's no problem so far, but will it be a problem when we have OpenAI and other products out there which people will be using for search, a different kind of search? And Google has Bard, they're experimenting. It's web connected, but now so is OpenAI. I've got a product that's web connected, and you can use Bing, which uses OpenAI there. So there's the direct competitors, and the problem could be revenue. It's not a problem at the moment, but how is Google going to make money from their generative AI bets? We talked about this on the earnings call. There were a lot of questions about it, multiple questions about AI and how they're going to make money from it. Is it going well? There's a lot of uncertainty there, because let's just face it, the cash cow is the search. They make a huge amount, as we can see from the earnings, a huge amount on search where they insert ads. It's an advertising business. Are they going to be able to do that? Now, I've been thinking about this while using Bard, and I think they can insert ads in there in many places like they do now, perhaps in a different way, but I can see if they join to their other products like maps and so forth, they can definitely put ads in there. People are still searching for things. They just want one answer, but there is uncertainty there about how Google's going to do that. So this new multimodal model that's coming out soon, they're saying next year. Earlier on, they were saying possibly this year. I thought they could be rushing it out this year. Gemini gets called. When that comes out, how good will it be? And will they be able to generate revenue? Is it going to cannibalize search, which is their cash cow? Hugely so. One of the best businesses that have ever existed in the world, let's face it. It's just such targeted advertising. I mean, really, when you think of it in comparison to other kinds of advertising, it's incredible. It has been incredible for 25 years. They've just had their 25-year anniversary. So they're talking about that on the earnings call. And so is this a point where it starts to decline, or are they going to keep up with AI? It's uncertainty. And I think that's one of the reasons that the share price is not being positive after this great earnings. They're still making a lot of money. So I think there's definitely a perception out there that Google is playing catch up with OpenAI and Microsoft, because that's their big investment that Microsoft has. They're playing catch up. Can they catch up? And will the share price actually go up substantially until that uncertainty has gone away, or until Google comes out with a product that is just incredible? There's a lot of pressure here for them to do that. And the founders have come back. Sergey Brin's come back. Larry Page, I think they're getting back in there to come up with this next generation of products to see them forward. And can the revenue follow that like it has with Google Search, which has been so powerful for them over the past 25 years? Now, the second source of uncertainty, and I believe one of the reasons that the share price declined, is the regulatory factor. We all know that these are possible monopolies. Big US tech. I think there's more than one monopoly here. Definitely Alphabet. If you look at search, Google search, it definitely is a monopoly, a huge market share. It has had for a long time. Regulators have been threatening to look at it, as Microsoft has in the past. I think Google has probably got more of a concern here, because Microsoft, they have attacked Microsoft in the past. A lot of investors won't remember going back to the dot-com bubble or 2000 that Microsoft did get looked at. Now they're looking at Amazon and they're looking at Google and possibly Meta. I know Meta in the earnings call or in their just earnings that happened today, they mentioned that that is a source of concern for them. But I kind of get the feeling their numbers were so good. Meta's numbers were so good today that monopolies say that. Peter Thiel has said that in one of his talks many years ago, which is still online on YouTube, where he said that if it's a monopoly, they play up the competition. They say, we've got a lot of competition. And Meta has said that it will really hurt us if we get looked at, when really the numbers are pretty amazing. And Google's kind of the same. And Peter Thiel said that. He basically said that Google was a monopoly in search, just so powerful. And so this is a concern, I think, with investors, that if they start to be looked at. And one of the areas is smartphone search. And let's face it, that so many people use their smartphones all the time. So they have Android, which has got a big market share on smartphones, not just on their own hardware, which they talked about in the earnings call has been a positive, but on other hardware as well. Android phones, which use Google, which use Google search and Google products, but on iPhone as well. Google has a deal with Apple, which they pay them something like $20 billion a year for, to have the default search on smartphones. And I think that is a source for regulators to look at, to say, well, look here, Google, if you've got basically all of the smartphones or so much of them having Google search and you're paying for that, what if they weren't on smartphones? What if they were forced not to have that on iPhones? What would happen then? Microsoft might be able to bid on it and use it. If it was Bing being used, that would increase Bing's market share. And of course, with generative AI there, or Apple could come up with their own search and use that. That's probably the most likely scenario if that was to happen. But I think that is a concern for Google. It's a concern for investors. The regulatory environment, they've been able to, let's say, get away with it. These companies have been monopolies for a long time. They've got such good market share. They're so strong. And so if regulators start to crack down, look at that over the next 5 years, it's another source of uncertainty. And I think for Google in particular, because of their such strong search, but they could say going into the AI area that they are open to competition. So it could not work out like that. Regulators could pull back, especially if Google does start to get hit with this competition from AI. And Google can say that we've got competition. Look at what Microsoft's doing. Look what OpenAI is doing. But I think it is a source of uncertainty right now. And it could be the second reason that the price has actually gone down rather than staying stable or even going up after these great earnings. So the question is, where does Google stock go from here? Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Continuing to go down? The broader market is not looking so great. During this October 2023, it hasn't been great. It's had a pretty good year, as I said, still over 40% for the year. It was up more than that. Other tech stocks have gone up a lot. If you look at Tesla, it was up over 100% at some point. I think it's a bit lower than that now after their not so great earnings and the concern about interest rates. It does seem like Google isn't being concerned with these interest rates at the moment. The advertising revenue is still very good. There could be a recession coming along. That could be another source of concern, a recession later this year, although there's not much of this year left, but in 2024, which could hurt their advertising. I'm not going to predict where the stock goes in the short term, but the earnings are good, so it could continue on if they continue being a monopoly that they have. If serious competition comes along from AI and their new product isn't so good, if it's perceived as not very good, it could start to eat away at that moat, that huge wide moat that Warren Buffett talks about, a moat which is really a stand-in for a kind of monopoly. If a company's got just a huge moat, that really is a monopoly, but he doesn't want to say that. He likes monopolies for sure, though. He invests in monopolies. If you look at his major stocks, major companies, they're pretty much monopolies. And he did say that they missed out on Google, and he was kind of annoyed. He said in interviews that they missed out on Google, and he should have seen that early on, because their companies were using Google ads and they saw how good they were. They saw that it was a good business, but they missed it early on, but he hasn't bought it. It makes you wonder if he would buy Google at some point, because he did buy Apple when the share price went way down. So that would be really interesting. That would be fascinating to see if Berkshire Hathaway bought Google at some point. But if Google keeps up with these stellar earnings over time, the share price should go up over time. I mean, it's a voting machine in the short run, the market, and a weighing machine in the long run. Ben Graham said that Warren Buffett also says that. So it should go up if they continue to have these great earnings. They were not bad. I'm not invested in Google and Alphabet. I tend to go for smaller companies. I mean, these are massive companies, all these big techs. If you think of Meta and even Tesla, Google, Microsoft, these are massive market cap companies. So if you think about even going 10x from here, that's difficult to do with a company that's over $1 trillion. It's to get to $10 trillion market cap to go 10x. Whereas a smaller cap company, say if it's $1 billion or let's say $5 billion being the cutoff, 10x is much easier than one of these massive mega caps. But if they keep being monopolies like this, if they keep having these such strong earnings, even Apple's amazing that it manages to hit every single quarter, every single year. It just gets better and better. There's no reason why the market cap couldn't keep going up and up, except for these regulatory concerns and these other concerns. These tech companies have been disruptors in the past. Being disrupted is one of the major concerns, and that you can't rule that out. You can't ever rule that out. Look how AI came in so quickly. It had been going in the background there. People had kind of forgotten about it or thought it was a long way off. And then bam, and came OpenAI with a really good product that was one of the fastest growing products ever. So they can be disrupted. It's not out of the question. Even the iPhone could be. But in terms of Google, it could be as well. Until that uncertainty has gone away, I kind of doubt that it's going to be very, very strong in terms of the stock price. But if that uncertainty does go away, then possibly. But I'm not going to predict which way it goes in the short term or even the medium term. But I think there's a lot of uncertainty with Alphabet, with Google, that has to kind of be more certain over time. Now, I'd really like to know what you think about what's going on with Google. Do you think what I've said is correct about this uncertainty that's going on? What do you think about their AI? Will they come out in front? Let me know in the comments what you think. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to put a link here to a previous video about Google, its AI development and its competition and what it could mean for search. And here, I'm going to put a link to what Google thinks that you should watch next. I'll put those links in the description as well. Thanks for watching or listening, and I'll see you in the next one.